Hi everyone, it's Danny Schur. Welcome to Musical Mondays. Today's topic, confronting systemic racism with art, in sports, and in life.
I'm tired of all the people.
You ever gonna take that uniform off?
I've never been treated equal to a white man until I got this uniform. Now I don't want to take it off.
I'm the composer, producer, co-writer of the Stan movie musical, a movie that depicts explicit and systemic racism often and often quite brutally.
On this Saturday in June.
I'm also a 3 times a week hockey goalie. Watch this video for some evidence of my hockey goaliedom. This video is inspired by 2 things. I made a video on this channel called 5 Ways It's 1919 Again. You can see it here. In that video, I didn't specifically use the term systemic racism. I should have. That was a mistake. So this video is an attempt to address that. But also I was inspired by an episode from my hockey life in the hockey locker room just this week. As I'm sure you're aware, first the NBA and then a whole bunch of sports leagues, including the National Hockey League, had a boycott protesting the recent shooting. And it was in the hockey dressing room that I heard some ugly comments, starting with, "There aren't even any black players in the NHL. Why does the NHL have to be involved in this Black Lives Matter protest?" I didn't have the guts to confront this in the hockey locker room, but I want to unpack all of the deep history and the systemic racism that underlies those comments in the hockey locker room. It's a true enough fact that there aren't many black or brown NHL players. They're definitely in the minority. But to suggest that the NHL shouldn't join in the boycott because it's just not their purview, just not their business, or just not their demographic is to wholly forget the principle of solidarity. The Stan movie musical is set against the 1919 Winnipeg General Strike, a strike which enveloped the whole of the city of Winnipeg and involved some 35,000 people on strike, roughly half the people that were working at the time in the city of Winnipeg in 1919. But the amazing fact is that over half of those that participated in the Winnipeg General Strike were not, in fact, unionized.
Why are we talking about a strike? We are not union.
Union and non-union. We are calling all workers to join us together in a general strike. Every worker in this city leaving their jobs, leaving our jobs as one, and standing up to the bosses.
Principle of showing solidarity, attempting to right an injustice were so a part of the Winnipeg General Strike. So having studied the event, I get the principle of solidarity. I believe it vital that the NHL, a largely white league with almost exclusively, if not exclusively, white owners, show solidarity with this cause. And remember, the protest is to show the system isn't working. If it takes 2 days of not being able to watch the NHL for people to pause and just say, wow, the system isn't working. When this kind of solidarity is being shown, it indicates that the problem is way bigger than I might have otherwise believed. And that's the point. And I commend the NHL, the players, the owners for taking part. But then the comments got uglier in the hockey locker room. The comments proceeded to suggest black guys don't even play hockey. It's just not their thing. Well, let's unpack that a little bit more. As evidenced by this clip from the movie, Canada, this supposed utopia of non-systemic racism, banned mass black immigration between 1919 and the 60s.
But now, they up and changed the law. You got this color skin, and they don't let you in no more.
Those were the prime years for the growth of hockey in North America. So generations of black, brown, and indigenous would-be players did not participate because they simply weren't here or weren't allowed to be. Let's skip over for a second to the history of the Indigenous and Métis communities in Canada. Our first Prime Minister, John A. Macdonald, founded, supported, and promoted a system that was brutally racist, the upshot of which was to displace indigenous people from the prairies in favor of white settlers whose culture was deemed superior to indigenous and Métis culture. Macdonald's government and virtually everyone thereafter promoted a system where indigenous people were forced to stay on reserves by law. It was illegal to leave reserves, largely without the right to vote, subject to residential schools for most of the 20th century, all in an effort to pave a path for white society to benefit economically. I can't tell you how many times I've heard the comment in the hockey locker room and otherwise, I work for a living. I fought for everything I have, while those lazy fill in the blank derogatory terms for indigenous people get thrown about. The point is, systemic racism paved a path and pushed aside indigenous culture and black and brown people in favor of white society. And let's not forget that the simple act of playing hockey itself is loaded with economic advantages conferred to white people to the detriment of others. It costs $10 to $20 per person per ice time just for the ice time, and your equipment can cost thousands, for a goalie several thousands. Is it any wonder that to this day indigenous people are underrepresented in the higher ranks of hockey? Because how do you attain your 10,000 hours of getting good at hockey if you simply don't have the money to be able to? And remember that for most of the 20th century, Jim Crow laws mutated into banker suppression of mortgages, in particular to the black community, but not restricted to the black community, in favor of whites. So when people say, I worked for our house, we spent generations getting what we attained. Yeah, and a couple of weeks ago, I read that the average household net worth of the black community versus the white community, this stat was in the United States, was a small fraction. I don't remember if it was 10 or 16%, but it was a small fraction. Because over the course of the 20th century, that intergenerational wealth built up from people passing down the wealth of previous generations and building up the net worth of today's generations so that you could mortgage your house to get the university, to get the better jobs. It's little wonder that those people most represented at the lower end of the pay scale are black, brown, and indigenous people. So the systemic racism is everywhere. Everywhere. It permeates the system. The NBA itself, a vastly white-owned league. Players were in a particular position to show real solidarity. It's been 400 years since the advent of slavery, 500 to 600 years since the advent of colonialism. The system has to change. I'm speaking to you from Winnipeg, Canada, home of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. It's a museum that has lofty goals. On the wall, there's this 20-foot high inscription of Article 1 from the Declaration of Human Rights. All human beings are born free and equal. The times have presented us with an opportunity. Let's take that opportunity to make sure that that Human Rights Declaration can be lived out truly in the course of our lives.
Have drawn my line in the sand, and this is where I stand.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Here's a couple of videos that I was alluding to. Stand by for more announcements about the Stand Movie musical. And as always, stand by.